Do you think she needs a buff? Okay, I can talk about like the problem with Ball. All right, so here's my hot take on Ball and why she's so hard to buff. There's a few reasons actually. Zhongli was easier to buff because with Zhongli, all you needed to do was buff his numbers, right? Like once you buff his numbers, you add like maybe I guess the damage shred on his E is actually the most OP part about Zhongli. So, but like he didn't need much to buff to be like universally OP or universally good. With Ball, it's a different story. Ball is Electro versus Geo, so she's gonna have lower use cases in a lot of teams. Like it's hard to play Ball in teams like with like Ganyu, for example, right? Because Ganyu doesn't care about super conduct, and super conduct is pretty much worthless for Ganyu. So you would never play Ball with Ganyu, no matter how insane of a generic support she is. She has the problem of being really good with certain characters and then really bad in general with other characters. And that's kind of at fault because of Electro. So if you look at Pyro characters, Overload is like does pretty decent damage, but the drawbacks to Overload is like you're basically knocking enemies back, so you have to spend stamina and time to chase after enemies as you hit them, which decreases your damage output. So with characters that have really short range, like the melee characters like Xiangling, who kind of like relies on her Guba having multiple hits for E to be relevant at all, and for her to like generate consistent energy, really bad with Xiangling. I would say pretty bad with Klee, because Klee's very low. First, you're using charge attacks with Klee, so you're reducing your own stamina, and that charge attack is very low range, so as you knock them back and having to chase after enemies, you're reducing the amount of times you can charge attack. Hu Tao's not that bad because of how fast she attacks and the ability to proc, 3 reactions at once. Same with Yumiya. Like Hu Tao and Yumiya are okay for that aspect. Diluc, again, short range, knockbacks don't really help him that much. It's just, in general, Pyro benefits a lot better with other characters. Yangfei, I don't know, I haven't played Yangfei too much. No one plays Xingyan either. No one plays Amber or Xingyan. Bennett, the national team, it's hard to replace any of those characters. If you're playing Bennett DPS and you're playing the national team, which is the best Bennett build, it's hard to think of replacing any of those characters with Ball. Or any Electro character, to be honest. So yeah, that's like Pyro. So two good characters with Pyro. Electro works really well with Hydro, so all these characters work really well with her. Very, very well. So like that's what I was talking about, where like Electro has like places where they're really, really good, and Hydro is one of them. You can play Electro with any of these Hydro characters and really do max damage. Geo kind of like synergizes with themselves. If you want to think about Geo DPSs, they kind of just work within themselves. But yeah, she works okay with Zhongli. I think there's repetition with Noelle in a way. Albedo, it's alright. I mean, Albedo's not really good outside of Geo, like double Geo comps. That's another thing, is like when you play Ball, because she needs Electro Resonance, you can't really play. No one's gonna play double Geo, double Electro. There's just not enough damage. There's no Dendro characters. Electro, obviously Electro works well with each other. Electro of Cryo, main thing you want to do is to proc Superconduct, so like, say, any character here can do that well, so it's not like Ball specifically works very well with these characters, and with certain characters like Ganyu, she doesn't work that well at all. You could also argue Ayaka, if you're doing kind of like Cryo Ayaka build. She only works really well with Eula, but that's about it. And then Animo, doesn't work with the Animo DPSs like Xiao. She's really bad with Xiao. And her ult being such short ranged, you can't really reach Venti. Also, the thing I would say is she also doesn't work with Beidou and Electro Traveler that well. So that, again, and Razor. So even in her own class, she only works well with like Sarah, Fischl. Lisa's just, no one plays Lisa. And Keqing doesn't work well with Ball, I think. There's just better characters to play over Ball. So Even in her own class, she only works well with Sarah and Fischl. She just has limited use cases, right? So that's the first argument, is that no matter what you do, like, you can fix, like, people are, like, really mad about the Beidou thing. You can fix the Beidou thing, but that's only going to make her relevant for, like, one more team, maybe. Like, just the Beidou Raiden DPS team. So that's number one. Number two being, she scales off energy recharge. So she's in a really awkward spot where, like, half her kit is to, like, generate you energy, but at the same time she's kind of a sub DPS because her skills are mainly to do damage instead of provide utility, right? Her scaling, the way her resolve works, like, everything is supposed to scale into doing more damage, but, like, she's capped to how much she can hit compared to other characters. That's a big thing. Like, if you want her to be, she's just in the middle ground. Like, she helps, like, she has some utility in generating energy, like, very little. She scales off energy recharge, so I guess the idea is to spam her burst so that you can spam other people's burst. But that also makes it worse for her because she doesn't, as a result, it's harder for her to do more damage. With Electro characters, you need them to have high base scaling because they don't scale well. So at the very least, you need them to have, like, high multipliers within themselves because their reactions don't scale. So that's hard to fix, right? They're not gonna, like, I've never seen Mihoyo change a character's ascension stat before. They're not gonna do that. So this already puts her at a weird spot. The next thing they could do is buff the Electro element. They've already buffed Electro before. They've buffed the elemental damage and everything, or like the reaction damage, but that's not gonna help. There's a clear ceiling to how much Electro reactions can do, right? Like, it can't crit, and it doesn't scale off percentage attack. They can't really buff the Electro element unless they rework it. Like, they have to rework the Electro element. Or they just say, like, fuck it, we're just gonna double her numbers. We're gonna make, at level 7, her base damage is gonna do, instead of 600%, we're gonna make her do, like, 1200 or 900%. Like, and those are all the different things you would have to look at when you change her for, like, a sub DPS. And if you want her to be more of a supportive role, which it doesn't look like, they're just very confused here because they're like, oh, we want to, they only have one line that really helps support characters, or two lines, I'm sorry. Her E, which buffs your elemental burst damage in your group, and energy regen when she attacks. She can't be like a standalone utility support, but she's also, like, kind of weak in terms of sub DPS. Now, don't get me wrong, I think she's better than Fischl, debatably better than, like, most of these Electro characters when it comes to sub DPS. But that's also necessary because she is a 5-star. Like, she has to be. If Fischl or Beidou is better than Raiden, that's just bad character design. What do you mean Electro can't crit? So Electro reactions can't crit. So you know how, like, people, when they do, like, vaporize or melt, they get these huge, like, 100k, 200k, 300k numbers? That's because they also, you can crit with those reactions. So, like, your Electro Charge, your Overload, your Super Contact, those can't crit. You guys just get C2? Yeah, she's also, the thing is, her damage potential is really, like, locked behind Constellations. I mean, that's kind of similar to what, like, what Child and Hu Tao, like, you kind of really want Hu Tao C1, right? You kind of want Hu Tao C1, you kind of want, like, Child C2. Like, Mihoyo has been, the last few characters that Mihoyo has released has made it seemingly clear that if you really want them to be as good as you want them to be, you really have to spend extra money for Constellations.